Hello, in this tutorial you will learn how to paint this spring path painting. This is an 11-inch by 14-inch canvas with acrylic paints, and I'm using the Liquitex Basics acrylic paints. The first thing you're going to do is divide your canvas in half. Using a ruler, I use a T-square to make sure it's aligned on the edges. Draw the horizon line at approximately the halfway point. Next, you're going to draw the path. Draw two diagonal lines starting from the horizon line and go all the way to the bottom of the canvas. The path does not come to a point, it's more like a trapezoid. Okay? Then you're going to use the colors Titanium White and Cad Yellow Light. Load those two colors on your palette and get your 3/4 inch flat brush ready. I like to dip my brush in the water first and then pat it dry so that it's not soaking wet, but it's not a dry brush either. Next, load the Titanium White. We're going to paint a circle that goes right in the center of the painting. This is going to be the brightest part of the painting. We can say that this is the sun in the sunset, and it goes above and below the horizon line. So this circle is probably about 4 inches diameter. You can estimate it, doesn't have to be exact. Apply a nice good layer of that white. And then dip the corner of your brush in the yellow. So we're going to paint this radiating color. So when I dipped my corner of the brush in the yellow and applied it to the white, it blended with the white to become this light yellow color. Basically, we're going to be painting this sky in rings. So around this white circle, I'm going to blend it. I don't want to get rid of that white, but I want the yellow to blend with the white so it's a nice smooth transition. And I'm just going to keep adding more yellow as I work my way out towards the left and right edges of the canvas. I'm going to load my brush in the white and the yellow. The yellow is going to get slightly more pure form of yellow, not necessarily darker, but less white as you work your way out. And yes, I am going below the horizon line as well. I'm not making a complete circle under the horizon line. I'm making probably about 2 to 3 inches below and just kind of stopping. This is because the yellow glowing sunset kind of reflects on the ground in this painting. Okay, so then I'm going to load my palette with Light Portrait Pink. This is an optional color, but it provides another color in the sky besides just yellow. So I'm going to load, my brush is not rinsed off at all. I'm going to load it with that Light Portrait Pink, and I'm going to apply it to the canvas, and I'm going to paint the Light Portrait Pink all the way to the edges. Again, blending the colors that are already on the canvas. This pink should be very pale in color, so you want to add some white to your brush to get it to be nice and pale, but get it to be smooth and blend it in with the yellow. So you see I can add more yellow to my brush to bring it in closer to that Light Portrait Pink and blend it in. So this sky is very, very light in color. It's got a bright middle. The sky is nice and pale and light because the focus is not really on the sky. The focus is going to be on the trees, which are darker and more vibrant in color. Okay, but that is it for my sky. Next, I'm going to move on to the path. So this is neutral gray, value 5. And I'm going to use that 3/4 inch flat brush, dried off, rinsed. And I'm going to paint the path. I'm going to start at the bottom. So we drew the path in with the pencil, which is nice because we know what we're doing here. But I am purposefully going outside the lines. And I'm going left and right with my brush, and I'm going to go almost all the way up to that horizon line. So it's getting narrower as you go towards the sun. And then when you get pretty close to that sun, you're going to grab some white on your brush, kind of drag it out on the palette a little bit. But that gray is going to get lighter as it gets closer to the vanishing point or the sun. And it's going to turn almost white as it gets to the horizon line itself. I'm not going to paint above the horizon line because the path needs to stay below that horizon line. So that first horizontal line we drew, I'm not going above that with this path. And then I'm blending that white in with the gray, working my way down. So I'm adding a little bit of white to the rest of the path. But really I want it to create the effect of the gray being darkest at the bottom, and then it gets slowly lighter as it approaches the background. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm applying the white and the gray, blending it so it goes from light to dark. And again, you want to make sure you're consistent with these strokes. They're all left and right. Some of the strokes are a little bit thinner because I'm using the tip of the brush, a little bit thicker if you want to use the full width of the brush. But all the strokes are going horizontal. Okay, so next I'm going to rinse my brush off completely. And we're going to go do the grass. So the colors I used for the grass are light green permanent and phthalo green. If you want to simplify this painting, you could do without the phthalo green. The reason I chose the phthalo was to get it to be darker on the bottom and a little lighter in the back. So I'm going to start with the phthalo. This is a rinsed and dry brush. And I grab the phthalo green and I'm going to paint left and right strokes on the bottom of the painting. So I want to get pretty close to that path. It's okay if you overlap the green a little bit over the gray. That's perfectly fine. And then on the left side, I'm going to do the same thing, left and right strokes. Okay, so this bottom area is the phthalo. I think I went up about 2-3 inches here. And then I'm going to grab the light green permanent, and I'm going to apply the light green permanent so that it fades from phthalo green to light green permanent. So I'm going to go work my way up to the horizon line here, and here's a little trick I'm going to do. I'm going to let my paint dry out on this brush. So I'm not going to load it anymore with color. And as it kind of dries out, it gets thinner and it allows the green to kind of get faded away. We want to still see some of that yellow from the sky kind of under the green there. So letting the paint dry out is kind of a good effect to let that yellow still kind of show through. The background of the grass should be lighter. It's a landscape painting, so most of the times in landscape paintings, if we do grass or any kind of ground color, the color is always lighter as it gets towards the horizon line and darker on the bottom in the foreground. So that's how we create depth in painting. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the right side. Again, I loaded it with the light green permanent, and I'm going to work my way to the top. I'm going to blend it in down here with the phthalo real quick, but I'm going to work my way to the top, and I'm going to allow that color to dry out as I work my way up to the horizon line. And then if this trick of letting it dry out doesn't work too well for you, there's a couple other things you can do. You could apply water to the paint to get it to thin out a little bit. You can also, so I'm going to show you, just dip your brush in a little bit of water and it thins the paint out right there on the canvas. You can also grab a little bit of white, a little bit of that titanium white, and add that, and that'll get it to be lighter. Okay, so next, I know this went super quick, but I painted a sort of hill line above the horizon line. It's kind of optional, but it kind of gives some sense of higher level land or something. So I just kind of drew it out with the brush, drew the line, and then filled it in with a very light green. So I grabbed the titanium white and the light green permanent. My brush is a little watery, so it's a thin layer of paint to make sure that hill that we're painting in is nice and light. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing on the left side. I'm going to grab the titanium white and the light green permanent, and I'm just going to kind of paint my little hill line above the horizon line and fill it in. And then I'm going to go in and do some touch-ups here wherever there might be a little blank spot left, and add a little bit more phthalo down here and just do some touch-ups, especially close to the path where that green meets the gray. If you want the land to look kind of like it's a little hilly or bumpy, just change the strokes to kind of these wavy strokes. If you want the land to look like it's kind of curving down next to the path, again, you just kind of curve your strokes down as they go to the path. Just slightly, not like a bunch of arcs, but just slightly curve the strokes. Okay, very important is you need to let your painting dry. So I actually used a blow dryer to dry my painting, and now let's fast forward to this next step. We're going to do the trees. So for the trees, I used two different brushes. I used a number 12 flat brush, a number 4 round brush, and then I used the colors Burnt Sienna, which is like a dark reddish brown color, and the color Mars Black. Okay, so I'm gonna slightly water those colors down on my palette by using my brush. So this is the number 12 flat brush, and dipped it in the water without patting it dry, and I'm letting that water just kind of swirl around with this black and brown combo to get it slightly watered down. You don't want it drippy water, kind of ink consistency. Then I'm going to switch to chalk. So this is chalk is always lovely to use because you can erase it. It just comes right off the canvas, but I'm going to use the chalk to draw my larger tree. So we're going to paint the trees, and the trees are going to start out large on the very bottom of the painting, and they're going to get smaller. So the branches on the trees on the bottom go all the way to the top of the canvas. I know it's really hard to see the chalk because it's white against the very light color in the sky, but you can see what I did on the bottom. So I did the trunk on the bottom. The trunk starts out wide, it gets kind of narrower as it goes up, and then the branches, you just kind of sketch them out, and the branches go all the way to the top of the canvas. Then you're going to use your number 12 flat brush to paint in the tree trunk. So that slightly watered down paint, I'm just using that, and I'm that flow of that brown and black combo makes it easier to paint. I'm using the full width of my brush to paint this trunk. The trunk started out wider and it got a little bit thinner. As I work my way up, I'm going to turn my brush on its side to get a thinner stroke. So that's the beauty of using these flat bright brushes, is you can twist it to create different effects. So to create the branches, I'm actually using the brush on its side. Okay, and to get the branch to go to a point, you ease up on the pressure. So you press a little bit hard starting out with the branch, and then as you go to a point, you release the pressure and hold it lighter. So pressure is how hard or light you're holding the brush. I'm holding it hard to start out with, and then as I go to the point, I let go of the brush slightly so that I'm holding it lightly. It's kind of a skill that takes practice. I know branches could be kind of frustrating because a lot of times when we paint branches, they all look like the same rectangular shape, but we really want to vary the shape of the branch because it's nature, it's not geometry. And we want to make sure that the branch starting out is slightly thicker than the very edge of the branch, which is thinner. So I'm just going to kind of continue to paint off some smaller branches that are stemming off of the larger branches. And then the black and brown combo, you can see on my palette, it's not mixed all the way. I call it kind of swirly, where I don't mix the colors all the way, but I'm just grabbing it, and that just creates different variations of brown and black so that it's not one solid color. I'm going to paint one more branch, just kind of going a little vertical here. So keep in mind that this is the largest tree in the painting, so the trees that are going to be behind it are going to be smaller and shorter. So don't be afraid to make sure that this tree is large and those branches go all the way up the canvas, because it's only going to get smaller from here. So I'm going to paint an almost identical tree on the left side. So starting at the bottom of the canvas, make your trunk of your tree start out wider, and then it gets thinner as it goes up. It goes above the horizon line here, and then it branches off into like the letter Y, a very fancy letter Y. And then again, you're doing the pressure with the brush. So you're starting out kind of heavy when you do the start of the branch, and then you let go of the brush slightly to make it come to a point. And you're using the side of the brush, so the tip of it, to get that thinner line. And then you paint the little branches that are stemming off of the big branches. And really, to create the very thinner line, you hold that brush very lightly to get a thinner line on some of these branches. You could also alternate with your round brush. So you can use the round brush to get the smaller branches if you feel more comfortable using the round brush. And then make sure the bottom trunks of those trees touch the bottom part of the canvas. Okay, so I'm going to paint the second row of tree here, and this tree is going to be along the pathway, and it's going to be shorter than the tree in the front. It's going to be slightly thinner than the tree in the front. And the branches are not going to go all the way to the top of the canvas. They're going to go above the horizon line, but they're not going to go all the way to the top of the canvas. If you need to use the chalk to draw the smaller trees, you may do that. I skipped the chalk this second time around. But by all means, if you need to draw the tree out first, then go for it. And then, of course, that tree is behind the front tree, but I painted over the branches. You don't really notice that the branches are overlapping or anything like that. So if you need to paint the branches so they look like they're going behind the front tree, since you're using the same colors, it's not going to show that it's in front or behind. It's just going to create the illusion that the tree is behind the front trees because it's smaller. Again, so we're going to do the same tree on this side, so it's kind of a mirror of the tree. Of course, it's slightly different. It's not the exact same tree, but it's going to be the same width, the same height. And then I'm going to continue on to paint the third row of tree. And this one is going to be shorter, slightly thinner, and of course it's further down the path. So I'm going to start with the trunk. And then as we get to these smaller trees, I'm going to do 5 rows of trees. Feel free to switch to the number 4 round brush, or pretty much any small round brush that you feel comfortable using. That way, yeah, you can really get in and do the smaller details of the smaller trees and the smaller branches. And then you see me, I was actually filling in the bottom part of the trunks to make them look like they're not like just touching the ground, but you see a little bit of root. That's what I did. So I'm going to go ahead and use my advice and use the number 4 round brush for these smaller trees right here, because you can definitely create a thinner stroke with the smaller brush. Okay, so on to the 4th row of tree, I'm actually going to add a little bit of titanium white. You saw me mixing it on my palette there. So that black and brown swirly watered down combo, all I did was use that and add a little bit of white to it. That will allow this number 4 tree to look lighter. So now we're pretty far down the path. Kind of close to that glowing sun. So naturally, that tree will look kind of lighter because it's further in the distance. And then, of course, it's going to be shorter. So I'm going to go ahead and paint tree number 5. It's a little tree way in the distance. And I didn't go any further than that. I suppose you can go and add some more trees in the grass area or even some smaller trees, but I was going for more of a simple effect with the trees and not so complicated. So you see me painting a little bit of texture. I just went ahead and used that color that was on my palette, that white mixed with the brown and the black. I'm just painting some vertical strokes of texture on the branches. So that's all I did there. I'm going to go in and touch up some of the bases of the tree here with just the black, the Mars black. Okay, so we're done with the trees and we're going to let this dry because the flowers would not be fun if they mixed with brown, and we don't want that pink to mix with brown. So we're going to do the flowers next. This is the best part of the painting. It's so easy, but it's super effective and fun and relaxing. I use the colors quinacridone magenta, medium magenta, titanium white, a little bit of light portrait pink, and that number 12 brush. So when I do these strokes, I'm going to stamp using the flat brush, and it's going to create a sort of angular rectangle stroke. There's a lot of paint on my brush, so it's a nice thick slab of paint for each of these leaves. And all I'm doing is um, stamping the width of the brush to create one stroke, and then I'm flip-flopping it. So you have the paint and you flip-flop it like that, and it creates that sort of style with the flowers. And then when I go to reload my brush, I am not thinking about what color I'm grabbing. I'm just grabbing the color. So the pink, the magenta, the white, I am applying that. But notice I'm not really doing the center part. I'm working on the large trees right now. So the two large trees in the front, I'm kind of focusing on their leaves first because they would be larger. But as I go towards some of the smaller trees, I want to kind of on purpose use some more lighter colors towards the bright glowing sun. And instead of using the full width of the brush for some of the trees in the background, I'll maybe just use the corner of my brush to do kind of a smaller stroke than using the full width. So it's a lot of not really thinking about what you're doing, but at the same time, you're kind of making the flowers look kind of lighter in the middle, smaller towards the back, um, and larger strokes on the larger trees. But other than that, you can kind of just zone out and do this. Also, some of the flowers go below the horizon line, so you don't have to stay above the horizon line. I think wouldn't look as interesting if we didn't put any flowers below the horizon line. So maybe some of them are hanging off. In a little bit, I'm going to paint some that are kind of falling off the trees, and of course there would be some on the ground. So we'll do that. And then you kind of decide for yourself. I love the color quinacridone magenta, so I wanted to make sure there was plenty of quinacridone magenta strokes in there. But you could decide if you like the really light colors better than the darker pink colors. And then I'm going to do some falling down. So I'm using more of the corner of the brush to do some of the falling down flowers. So they're not like these huge strokes falling down. And then there would be a little bit of showing on the path. And then perhaps the path has a little bit of pink color to it as well. So you'll see me in a little bit apply some horizontal strokes of a little bit of pink on the path. So just kind of have fun with it to balance your painting out so there's still pink on the ground and the pink isn't all taking over up in the sky. So I'm doing just a few strokes on the path to get the gray to have a little bit of pink sheen to it. Then I'm going to add a few more flowers up here. It's very expressive, super relaxing. You can do this for all the seasons actually. You can do this exact same painting and do fall colors instead of the pink. So it would be a fall tree path painting. Do a few more horizontal stroke thing here on the path. Then I applied a little bit more of quinacridone to my palette so that nice dark gives you a little bit of contrast in the flowers. Okay, so One last thing I would like to do, and this is one of those, oh, let's throw in this detail sort of ideas, optional, but I have my number 4 round brush. I'm going to add a little bit of highlight on the side of the trees that are facing the path. So imagine the sun is hitting that part of the tree, so it would be glowing slightly. That's what I did. Mix the titanium white with that brown that was still wet on my palette. And I'm just adding a few sort of texture strokes just on the part of the tree that would be facing the bright sunny side. And then that is it for this painting. Um, Super relaxing painting. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I can't wait to see your version of this painting. So share it on the Pinterest pin, share it on the Facebook, message me, email me. Thank you for watching.